My name is Thomas Reed. For 18 years, I thought I had the kind of marriage people envied, stable, successful, built on loyalty and mutual ambition. But that illusion shattered the day I received a message from a stranger that exposed everything I refused to see. No lipstick on collars, no perfume that wasn't hers, just silence hiding betrayal. What began as pride in my wife's big promotion spiraled into a discovery so vile. It changed everything I believed about love, trust, and marriage. You think you know someone until you open their laptop. And what I found, it nearly destroyed me. 18 years of working hard, building a life, sharing a vision. We didn't have kids, not because we couldn't, but because we were both so driven, so focused on our careers. I'm a senior manager at a software firm, and she worked in marketing at a large regional company, smart, sharp, always polished. We were that couple people envied. You know the type, matching coffee mugs, neatly organized calendars, weekend plans that revolved around new restaurant openings or professional seminars. Julia was always the woman in control, her hair done just right, clothes impeccable, emails answered before breakfast. I admired that about her. I really did. Looking back now, maybe that admiration made me blind. It started about a year ago when Julia came home one evening glowing. Not just smiling, glowing. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor like she was floating, and before I could even ask how her day was, she threw her arms around me and whispered, "I got it, Thomas. I got the promotion." I remember that moment vividly. The smell of her perfume, the warmth of her embrace, the way her voice shook with excitement. I was thrilled for her. She had worked hard. No one could deny that. After more than a decade with that company, she had earned her place at the top. Executive role, bigger title, better pay. She'd made it. And I was proud. The first few weeks were business as usual. She had a few late nights, sure, but nothing crazy. When you're an executive in a marketing firm, staying late just comes with the territory, right? I knew that. She knew that. I never questioned it. If anything, I encouraged her to go after what she deserved. I even joked about it. "Don't work too hard, boss lady," I'd say, pouring her a glass of wine when she came home. She'd laugh, shake her head, kick off her shoes, and tell me about the endless meetings and how the younger employees didn't know how to pitch properly. She'd always been a perfectionist. So again, I didn't think twice. But there's something dangerous in trusting too much. Something foolish in thinking that time alone protects you from betrayal. There were no signs. None. Juliet didn't suddenly change her wardrobe. She didn't start hiding her phone or picking fights. In fact, she seemed even more affectionate than before. Every night, she'd kiss me on the cheek, curl up next to me in bed, talk about work like everything was just fine. If she was acting, she deserved an Oscar. And I was just happy to see her thriving. Looking back, I can see the tiny shifts I ignored. She used to be home by 6. Lately, it had crept to 7:30, sometimes even later. But she always had a reason. Client meetings, deadlines, company dinners. All of it sounded legitimate. Her explanations were confident, smooth, and delivered with that same reassuring smile. Still, there was one night I couldn't shake. She came home later than usual, almost 9 p.m., and she looked off. Not sad, not guilty, just distracted. Her makeup was faded, her blouse slightly wrinkled, like she'd changed quickly and not looked in the mirror afterward. I asked if she was okay, and she smiled thinly, nodded, and said, "Just a rough day, babe. I'm exhausted." I didn't push. That's the thing, I didn't push. You tell yourself you're being supportive. You tell yourself not to be that controlling husband who questions every detail. But the truth is, I should have asked. I should have dug deeper. I should have looked at the late nights and the new energy in her step and wondered if there was more to the story. But I didn't, because I believed in her. In us. It's funny how the mind works. How easily we brush away our instincts when we love someone. How loyalty can make us blind. How routine can make us numb. The signs were there, hidden in plain sight, woven into the fabric of our day-to-day life. And still, I never saw it coming. I used to believe that infidelity left behind clues. Lipstick stains, perfume that wasn't yours, mysterious charges on credit cards. But sometimes betrayal doesn't make a sound. Sometimes it moves in silence, cloaked in familiarity, and takes root while you're busy saying, "I love you." What I didn't know then, what I would soon find out, was that while I was pouring my energy into supporting her, She was pouring herself into someone else. Multiple someone else's, to be exact. And all it took was one message to rip the blindfold from my eyes. But that comes later. For now, I was still in the dark. Still the proud husband. Still the fool. Still believing that a promotion was just the beginning of a new chapter in our lives. Turns out it was just not the chapter one expected. About 2 weeks ago, everything changed. It started like any other Tuesday. I was at work, half distracted during a conference call, checking my LinkedIn inbox on my second screen. A new message popped up, short, vague. Just a simple hello from a woman named Monica. I didn't recognize the name. I clicked on her profile, thinking maybe it was a recruiter or a vendor reaching out for business. But no, she worked at Julia's company. Junior position. Marketing assistant. My stomach didn't drop yet. At that moment, it was just odd. I replied with a polite, "Hi, how can I help you?" and went back to my meeting. It wasn't until the next day, after work hours, that she messaged again. "Are you Julia's husband?" That question hit differently. Not offensive, not dramatic. Just loaded. I hesitated before replying. Something about it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I typed out a short, cautious, "Yes, I am." What came next flipped my entire world upside down. "I don't know if this is something you'd want to hear, but I know with certainty that your wife has been having relations with a few junior employees here. I'm sorry if this is out of line. I just thought it wouldn't be fair if you were in the dark. Please don't mention my name. This could cost me everything." I read that message 5 times. No, 10. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't blink. For a second, I honestly thought I was being pranked. Or maybe this Monica had some personal vendetta against Julia. Maybe Julia had disciplined her at work, and this was revenge. But then I reread the phrasing. A few junior employees. Plural. She didn't sound angry. She didn't sound vengeful. She sounded nervous. Scared, even. I stared at the screen for what felt like forever. My mind spun like a machine trying to compute a language it didn't understand. My Julia? Cheating? With subordinates? It didn't fit. Not with the woman I knew. Not with the woman who kissed me every morning and brought me coffee just the way I liked it. Eventually, I responded. I told her I appreciated her honesty. I promised to keep her name out of anything. But even as I typed the words, I still wasn't sure what to believe. This couldn't be real, could it? 10 minutes later, my thoughts spiraled again. I fired off a flurry of questions. How many people are involved? When did it start? Where did this happen? How do you even know all this? Her replies came slowly, like someone battling guilt with every word. I overheard 2 of the guys talking about it a couple of months ago. It wasn't vague. It sounded serious. They mentioned working late nights with her. I also saw her whispering with one of them in a secluded hallway. It stuck with me. I didn't want to get involved, but it didn't sit right. I report directly to her, so I kept quiet. But I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat there in silence. No words. No emotion. Just a cold pit forming in my chest. I wanted to believe this was a lie. That this woman Monica was just bitter, maybe jealous of Julia's promotion. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how calculated Julia's recent behavior had been. The late nights. The exhaustion. The occasional missed calls. It all lined up too perfectly. Still, it wasn't enough. I needed proof. Real proof. Not rumors. Not whispers. I couldn't just walk up to Julia and confront her with nothing but a LinkedIn message. She was too smart for that. She'd deny it. Deflect. Twist it into a misunderstanding. And then I'd be the paranoid husband, ruining a good thing over hearsay. So I made a decision. I was going to find out the truth myself. That night, I didn't say a word. I lay beside her in bed, pretending everything was normal while my brain mapped out my next move. I watched her sleep. Peaceful. Calm. Unaware that a storm had begun brewing right under her roof. She had no idea, but soon as she would. I didn't sleep that night. Julia lay beside me, her breathing slow and steady, one arm draped across my chest like nothing had changed. I stared at the ceiling, counting the seconds between each breath, wondering how long she'd been living this secret life. I kept telling myself I needed to stay calm, stay sharp. If I cracked now, I'd lose my only shot at uncovering the truth. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I needed more than a message. I needed something concrete, something that would shatter her lies beyond repair. The opportunity came 4 days later. Julia had an appointment at the salon, nothing unusual. She mentioned it over breakfast, casually sipping her coffee, hair wrapped in a towel, scrolling through her phone like always. I should be back in about 2 hours, she said. They're fitting me in between clients. I nodded, kept my face neutral. Take your time, I replied, and I meant it. Because she'd made a mistake that morning. A rare one. She left her laptop at home. Julia usually took her MacBook everywhere. Meetings, salons, even brunch with friends. She once joked it was her second brain. But that day, for some reason, it stayed behind. I don't know if she simply forgot, or if it was part of her act to look more relaxed. Either way, it was the window I'd been waiting for. The moment the door closed behind her, I went straight to the bedroom, opened her laptop, and held my breath. Her password wasn't a secret. It was our wedding date. At least, that hadn't changed. The irony wasn't lost on me. The screen flickered to life. Clean desktop, minimal apps. Julia was meticulous, but I wasn't here to admire her organization. I went straight for her messaging apps, iMessage, WhatsApp, and her email. At first, there was nothing unusual. Conversations with co-workers about project timelines, client feedback, presentation drafts. All professional, all above board. But then I saw a contact name that stopped me cold. DoorDash. Now, Julia never used DoorDash. She hated food delivery, always said the portions were too small and overpriced. So why would she have a direct message thread with someone named after a food app? I clicked it open. What I found made my skin crawl. It wasn't DoorDash. It was a man named John. Younger, judging by the casual tone and slang in the messages. And the thread, it was filthy. I felt sick scrolling through it. Texts laced with innuendos, private jokes, and explicit exchanges. He had sent her pictures. She hadn't sent any back, but her responses left no room for doubt. At one point, she wrote, "I can't wait to see you again. Last time was insane. I still feel it." My vision blurred. My hands trembled. But I couldn't stop. I had to see how deep the rot went. I backed out of that chat and checked others. 2 more stood out, both with men I didn't recognize. Their profile pictures were of guys in their 20s, both ridiculously handsome, both clearly not just friends. One was labeled PPT Edits, the other Client-Side Dave. Cute cover names. But their conversations were anything but business. Explicit messages, secret plans to meet at hotels near the office, jokes about coworkers not suspecting a thing. In one thread, she even bragged, "He's so clueless. Still thinks I'm pulling late nights for board meetings." He was me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. I just sat there, stunned, drowning in words I was never meant to see. And what chilled me the most was how casual it all was. She wasn't acting like a woman torn by guilt. She wasn't sneaking around because of some deep emotional conflict. No, this was routine, rehearsed, calculated. She was living a double life with the ease of someone who'd done it before. I copied everything. Screenshots, saved chats, forwarded emails, anything that could serve as proof. I wasn't going to confront her blind. When the time came, I wanted every word, every filthy message, every smug emoji she sent to those boys laid out in front of her like a mirror to the monster she'd become. When I closed the laptop, my reflection stared back at me in the black screen. I didn't recognize the man looking back. He was tired, broken, but something else burned in his eyes. Resolve. I had seen the truth. There was no turning back now. Julia thought she was untouchable, that her lies were safe behind passwords and silence. But I had the key, and soon, she would face everything she thought she'd hidden so well. I sat there in the dim light of our bedroom, staring at her closed laptop, the air around me heavy with betrayal. I had just uncovered the truth, undeniable, explicit, and soul-crushing. Julia, the woman I had devoted nearly 2 decades of my life to, had been cheating on me with not one, but at least 3 different men. Young, cocky, half my age, and clearly handpicked from her office like items on a lunch menu. Part of me still couldn't believe it. Not because I thought she was incapable, but because I had spent so many years convincing myself that what we had was unshakable. We were the couple who skipped the drama, who built our lives with spreadsheets, strategy, and shared ambition. We were too mature, too stable, too logical for this kind of chaos. And yet, here I was, numb, nauseated, humiliated. I couldn't bring myself to close the laptop just yet. My fingers hovered over the trackpad as I scrolled back through John's thread. DoorDash John. The audacity of that name still made my stomach twist. It wasn't just the sexual messages, they were bad enough. It was the comfort, the confidence. The way she spoke to him like he was her secret prize, like I didn't exist. And then, sprinkled throughout the filth, came a casual remark that sent a cold shiver down my spine. Can't believe we pulled that off in the office kitchen. You're bad for me, LOL. The kitchen, at her workplace. Not even a hotel room or discreet Airbnb. My wife, the polished executive, was sleeping with her junior staff in office break rooms and laughing about it afterward. That was the moment I realized something deeper. This wasn't just about cheating. This was abuse of power. She wasn't just betraying me. She was manipulating the very people who looked up to her, professionally and otherwise. And somehow, that made it worse. I opened the second chat, PPT Edits, aka Michael, another smug 20-something, who had apparently helped Julia revise her slides in more ways than one. He had sent her a selfie of himself shirtless in what looked like a conference room. Her reply? You're going to get us caught, dummy, but damn, you look good. I slammed the laptop shut. I couldn't take any more. The betrayal wasn't just emotional or physical, it was strategic. She had carefully concealed it, crafted it, wrapped it in corporate deadlines and budget meetings. And I, the loving, loyal husband, had applauded her every step of the way. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. My reflection looked pale, older than it had the week before. Grief does that to a man, ages him in silence. But I wasn't going to crumble. Not yet. There was still one thing I needed to do, something that hadn't crossed my mind until that moment, and now felt like a ticking bomb in my chest. I had to get tested. Julia and I had still been intimate. Even as she texted these boys about late-night rendezvous, she still climbed into our bed and made love to me like nothing was wrong. And now, the idea that she could have passed something to me, something physical, something permanent, made my skin crawl. I booked an appointment the next morning, told the doctor I needed a full panel, no questions. The wait for the results was excruciating. Every day felt like walking through fog with a blade at my throat. But when the call finally came, it confirmed my worst fear. Gonorrhea. I was stunned into silence. I'd only ever been with one woman since the day we got married. I hadn't even looked at another woman. And now, because of her choices, her lies, I was sitting in a clinic being handed a prescription I never should have needed. That was the final straw. It wasn't just emotional anymore. This was physical, real, invasive, and it was proof. Cold, hard, medical proof that Julia had taken something sacred and dragged it through the filth. I held the printed results in my hand like a weapon. She gave me this. Her lovers gave her this. And now it was inside me. A disease that mirrored the infection that had been growing in our marriage for months, maybe years, without me seeing it. No more hiding. No more pretending. The time for silence had passed. When she got home that evening, she wouldn't be walking into the same house. She wouldn't be walking into the arms of a clueless, supportive husband. She'd be walking into reckoning. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I welcomed it. I didn't eat that day. I couldn't. Every bite would have turned to ash in my mouth anyway. I sat in the living room with the lights dimmed, the printed STD test result resting on the coffee table like it was radioactive. My hands were clenched tight, knuckles white, the silence of the house louder than ever before. The betrayal was no longer a whisper. It had become a scream. And tonight, she would hear every single syllable of it. I watched the clock like a hawk. 7:42 p.m., her usual arrival time. I heard the car pull into the driveway, the engine cut, the clink of heels on the pavement. My heartbeat quickened, not from fear, not anymore, but from the boiling pressure of everything I had swallowed for weeks. The door opened. "Hey, babe. I'm home," she called, cheerful, distracted, rustling in her purse like any other evening. Business as usual. But tonight wasn't usual. "Can you come here for a second?" I said, my voice even, almost too calm. She walked in, still in her work blazer, lips pursed like she was about to tell me a funny story from the office. Then she stopped cold when she saw me sitting still, arms crossed, the paper on the table between us. She glanced at it, then at me. "What's going on?" I didn't hesitate. "I know you've been cheating on me." Her breath caught. It was subtle, just a small intake of air, but I saw it. The crack in her foundation. She blinked, hard, her hand still gripping her purse strap. "Thomas, what are you talking about?" I leaned forward, picked up the paper, and held it up. "One of your boyfriends gave you gonorrhea," I said. "And now? You gave it to me." For a second, she just stared at the test result, like it was in a language she didn't understand. Then her face crumbled. Her knees buckled slightly as she sat down across from me, shoulders slumped, hand covering her mouth. She didn't even try to deny it. No gaslighting. No fake outrage. Just silence. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." It sounded like someone apologizing for dropping a glass, not for shattering an entire life. "I don't have an excuse," she added, her voice shaky. "I thought you'd never find out. I thought I could keep it separate. I don't know what I was thinking. I wanted to yell, to scream, to throw something, anything, to match the rage inside me. But I didn't. I sat still, cold, staring at the woman I no longer recognized. "How many were there?" I asked, my tone like a blade. She didn't answer. "3 that I know of. And you labeled one of them DoorDash on your phone. Did you think that was clever?" She flinched. Then came the tears, quiet, glistening, sliding down her cheeks. But there was no sobbing, no hysteria, just shame. Or at least that's what she wanted me to believe. "Please, Thomas, we've been together for almost 20 years. Don't throw it all away over this mistake." "A mistake?" I cut her off, my voice rising now. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is locking your keys in the car. This," I slammed the paper down, "this is a full-blown, calculated betrayal. This is sleeping with people who work under you, abusing your power, risking my health, and lying to my face for God knows how long." She opened her mouth, then closed it again. No defense, no justification, only silence. I stood up slowly. My knees ached, not from age, but from the weight of standing after carrying so much invisible pain. "You're not sleeping here tonight," I said flatly. "Pack a bag. Stay somewhere else. Tomorrow, I'm calling a divorce lawyer, and I suggest you do the same." She looked up at me with eyes full of panic. "Wait, can't we at least talk this through? Maybe counseling, maybe just—" "There's nothing left to talk about," I replied. "You made your choices. Now I'm making mine." She stared at me, stunned, and for the first time in years, she looked genuinely powerless. Not in control, not calculating, just a woman who finally ran out of lies. "I'll be in the living room," I added, turning my back on her. "You have 20 minutes. I heard her footsteps shuffle toward the bedroom. I didn't follow. I sat on the couch, listening to the sound of drawers opening, zippers tugged shut, hangers scraped from the rod. The noise of a life being packed into a bag. And with every second, the fog began to lift. The man I had been, the loyal husband, the quiet fool. He was leaving too. She walked past me 15 minutes later, eyes puffy, lips trembling, suitcase in hand. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. Because something between us had already died, and I wasn't going to bury it with her. The silence after she left was unlike anything I'd ever known. It wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. The kind of silence that seeps into your bones and whispers things you try not to hear. For nearly 2 decades, Julia had been a constant in my life. Her voice in the kitchen, the sound of her heels on the floor, the familiar rustling of her keys on the hallway table. Now, all of that was gone, replaced by a gaping absence that somehow felt louder than her presence ever did. But I didn't mourn. Not in the way people expect. I didn't cry. I didn't replay the good times. I didn't even stare at old photos wondering where it all went wrong. Because I knew exactly where it went wrong. When she chose to sleep with those men and still came home to kiss me like nothing had happened. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. His name was Martin Locke, an older man with silver hair and eyes that told me he'd seen worse. I didn't need sympathy, I needed results. I gave him everything. The screenshots, the names, the printouts from her laptop, even the STD test results. I watched his eyebrows rise slightly as he sifted through the evidence. Then he looked up at me and said calmly, "This will work very well in your favor." It was the first time in weeks I felt like I had any power. Julia contacted me later that day, through text, of course. No calls, no long messages. Just a short, clipped line. "I'll be hiring a lawyer too. Let's get through this fast." She didn't say sorry again. She didn't ask to talk. I think she finally understood that whatever part of me she thought still loved her was gone. The divorce process began swiftly. During the first meeting with our attorneys, she sat across from me in a beige suit, her expression blank, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked tired, worn down, but not broken. No, Julia was still trying to maintain control, still trying to protect whatever fragments of her image she had left. But the truth was afire, and I had the gasoline. Martin presented everything. The dates, the explicit messages, the alias names in her phone. Then he slid forward the lab result. Julia flinched. Her lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "We have medical confirmation that my client contracted an STD from the respondent," Martin said. "This isn't just adultery, this is reckless endangerment." Her lawyer tried to push back, murmuring something about privacy and context, but it didn't matter. The facts were too heavy to ignore. And the court, for once, didn't look away. The ruling came down harder than either of us expected. I got the house. We both had cars, so we kept our own, but the judge ruled in my favor when it came to alimony. Julia's new executive salary played a big part in that. She was now earning significantly more than I was, and because of her infidelity, thoroughly documented and undisputed, I walked away not only with financial protection, but with dignity intact. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile when the verdict was read. I just sat there, hands folded, eyes steady. I wasn't interested in revenge for show. I wanted justice, and I got it. But I wasn't finished. As I sat alone in that big, echoing house, I couldn't stop thinking about those younger men. Her affair partners. Part of me wanted to go after them, drag their names into the spotlight, destroy their reputations. But then I remembered Monica's words, the way she described the office environment, the way Julia carried herself. And it hit me. Julia had power over them. These weren't just flings. They were subordinates. Employees. Men who might have felt pressure, intimidation, or manipulation, even if they didn't realize it at the time. They may have laughed, joked, acted willingly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that Julia's status had given her the ability to blur boundaries. So I made one last move. I created an anonymous email, sent it directly to the HR department of her company. I told them one of their top executives had been engaging in inappropriate relationships with multiple junior employees, possibly abusing her authority. I provided dates, names, enough context to open an internal investigation. I didn't need credit. I didn't even want to see the fallout. But Monica, she kept me informed. She messaged me weeks later to say that the investigation had taken off quickly. Several employees were interviewed. And there was one more name, someone I hadn't even discovered. A fourth man. Another secret Julia had managed to hide. Not anymore. Eventually, the company let her go. Fired for misconduct. Officially, it was phrased delicately in the statement she later posted on LinkedIn. Something about a restructuring of leadership. But the truth followed her like a shadow. People talk. And sexual misconduct tied to executive power doesn't go away quietly. Yes, I knew it could put her alimony at risk. No, I didn't care. Julia still had money, still had options. But now she had a stain on her record that couldn't be erased with charm or a fresh wardrobe. And me? I finally felt clean. Not because I got the last word, but because I took back control. For the first time since this nightmare began, I could walk through my house without wondering if the walls were laughing behind my back. I was no longer the man she betrayed. I was the man who made sure she never forgot it. After the dust settled, after the court dates passed and the signatures dried on the final divorce decree, I expected some sense of relief to follow. And in a way, it did. But it wasn't the kind of peace I used to imagine. It wasn't warm or comforting. It was cold, clear. A quiet space where pain didn't disappear but stopped screaming so loudly. Julia was out of my life now. Officially. On paper, emotionally, physically. Gone. But what lingered was the echo of her arrogance. The way she had walked into my life each night after laying with someone else, wearing that same smug expression, believing she'd never be caught. And that still gnawed at me. For weeks after the divorce, I stayed quiet. No messages. No confrontation. I had done everything right. Documented her infidelity, protected myself legally, made sure justice was served. But I couldn't ignore one final thread that remained loose. Her reputation. Julia had walked through life cloaked in invincibility. Always the star. Always the one admired, respected, praised. Even after the divorce, she still updated her social media like nothing had happened. Pictures of brunch with colleagues, captions about new beginnings and growth through challenges. No one knew the truth. But I did. And so did Monica. She messaged me again, this time sounding relieved. The company's HR department had conducted a full-scale investigation. Interviews, email audits, everything. Turns out, Julia's misconduct went deeper than I imagined. There wasn't just John, Michael, and Dave. There was another young man, Marcus, barely 25, quiet, kept to himself. Monica said he looked shaken during the interview process, like he hadn't wanted to talk, but finally admitted enough. That was the final nail. The company terminated Julia's contract. No fanfare, no farewell party, no goodbye email. Just a silent cut and a generic LinkedIn update from her a few days later. Moving on to new opportunities. Grateful for everything I've learned. But I knew better. Behind the scenes, whispers spread. You can't hide that kind of fall forever. Rumors became questions. Questions became conversations. Her name began to lose its shine. And I didn't feel guilt. Not one bit. People asked me, friends, mutual contacts, why I didn't go after the men she cheated with. Why I didn't blast them publicly or drag their names into the mess. And the truth is, I thought about it. I really did. But something held me back. Those men, they were employees, subordinates, young, impressionable, likely drawn in by her power, charm, or simply the pressure of saying no to a superior. Maybe some enjoyed it. Maybe some even initiated it. But in the end, it was Julia who had the authority. She knew what she was doing. She weaponized her position and turned the office into her personal playground. Going after them would have been messy, maybe even cruel. So I didn't. But her? She deserved every ounce of what came. I found out from Monica that HR had documented it all. If Julia ever applied to another high-level firm, the red flags would follow her. Even if she tried to downplay it, the whispers wouldn't stop. That pristine reputation she guarded so fiercely was now stained, and it wouldn't wash out easily. It did put my alimony at risk. Technically, being fired could reduce or eliminate her obligation. But I didn't care. I never needed her money. What I needed was the knowledge that she didn't walk away clean, that she didn't get to destroy me and keep her crown. And that's exactly what I got. We've spoken twice since the divorce. Both times through email, both about logistical things, transferring car titles, closing a joint bank account. Her tone was clipped. No warmth. No venom. Just transactional. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't try to plead or apologize again. And honestly, I was glad. I didn't want closure. I didn't want to reopen the wound. I had found something better than forgiveness. I had found clarity. The house felt different now. Not just quieter, but freer. The walls no longer echoed with lies. I replaced the furniture, repainted the rooms, even tore up the garden she used to obsess over. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my space, every inch of it. I picked up new hobbies. I took weekend trips I had postponed for years. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. Slowly, piece by piece, I rebuilt my life, not around what I had lost, but around what I had learned. And perhaps the most surprising part, I didn't feel bitter. What Julia did was unforgivable, yes. It was calculated, selfish, vile. But she also freed me from illusions, from compromise, from a life where I thought loyalty was enough. She lost everything she built, all because she believed she was untouchable. And me? I lost a wife. But I gained something better. Myself. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals don't just hurt, they transform you. After everything Julia put me through, people kept asking the same thing. How did you not see it coming? I don't think they meant harm by it, but that question dug deeper than they realized. Because the truth is, I didn't see it coming because I trusted her. Completely. And that's what cut the deepest. Not just the affairs. Not just the lies. But the way she looked me in the eyes every night, kissed me, shared a meal, shared a bed, while carrying 1,000 secrets in her silence. But the man who once lived for that version of Julia doesn't exist anymore. The day she was fired and her pristine world came crashing down was the day I felt something shift in me permanently. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. But there was a quiet satisfaction in knowing she no longer got to pretend. She no longer got to walk into rooms with her fake smiles and curated image while I was left drowning in humiliation. Her mask had been ripped off for everyone to see. That day, I walked through our, now my, home with a strange sense of finality. I wandered room to room, taking in the spaces we once shared. The dining room where we hosted friends, laughing over wine and jokes. The hallway where we used to exchange hurried kisses before rushing to work. The bed where I once felt safe. It was all a lie, so I stripped it all down. I donated our old living room set. I threw out the expensive throw pillows she insisted on collecting. I boxed up every photo of us and stuffed it into the attic, not out of hatred, but because I didn't need to look at ghosts anymore. I wasn't clinging to what we were. I was claiming who I was becoming. And the strangest thing? As I rebuilt my space, I started rebuilding myself. I reconnected with my brother, who I hadn't seen in almost 3 years because Julia thought he was too chaotic. I rejoined a running group I used to be part of before work took over my life. I started waking up early again, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I liked the quiet stillness of the morning. I liked the feeling of being in control again. And control, that's what I had lost for so long. When you're in a relationship like the one I had, you don't always realize how slowly it consumes you. The compromises you make seem small at first. A dinner skipped here, a friend ghosted there. But over time, your world becomes smaller, tighter, shaped around the needs and ego of someone else. Now, that grip was broken. I remember one afternoon, I walked past a cafe Julia used to love. The same one where she met John once, according to one of the messages I found. I stood outside for a moment, staring through the glass, remembering how she always insisted on sitting by the window, how she loved their overpriced scones. And I walked right past it, because she didn't own those places anymore. Not in my mind. Not in my life. I started traveling, just short trips at first. Nashville, Denver, Santa Fe, places she never wanted to visit because they weren't her style. And in those unfamiliar cities, surrounded by strangers and empty hotel rooms, I found something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. Freedom to be curious, to be impulsive, to be imperfect. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't chasing a new relationship or revenge sex or some wild rebirth fantasy. I was simply learning how to breathe again. I bumped into Monica once, at a bookstore of all places. She recognized me instantly, gave me a small, uncertain smile. I thanked her genuinely. She looked relieved. "I didn't want to ruin your life," she said. "I just didn't want you to stay blind." "You didn't ruin it," I told her. "You helped me see the truth. And that saved me." We didn't keep in touch after that. There was no need to. Some people come into your life just long enough to push you toward clarity, and that's enough. As for Julia, I hear little things through the grapevine. She's doing freelance marketing now, struggling to find steady executive work. A few former friends tried to test the waters, asking if we'd ever reconcile, if I still spoke to her. The answer is simple: I don't. Not because I hate her, but because she no longer holds any part of me. People assume betrayal breaks you, but that's not always true. Sometimes it forges you, refines you, burns away the illusions you clung to, and reveals the steel beneath. I was loyal. I was faithful. I was trusting, and she took that for granted. But in the end, she lost far more than I did. She lost a man who would have stood by her through anything. She lost the stability, the trust, the quiet love that doesn't need grand gestures to be real. And me? I found something she never had: peace. Because when the storm cleared and the ashes settled, I stood in the wreckage of my old life. Not broken, not bitter, but finally free. Looking back, I've realized this experience, as brutal as it was, left me with lessons that cut deeper than the betrayal itself. First and foremost, blind trust, even in a long marriage, can be dangerous. Love should never mean abandoning awareness. We all want to believe the people we cherish are incapable of hurting us, but life has taught me that anyone is capable of anything, especially when they stop valuing what you built together. Another truth? Silence protects no one but the guilty. If something feels wrong, don't ignore it. Look closer. I spent too many nights dismissing subtle signs, convincing myself that loyalty meant patience. It didn't. It meant self-betrayal. For those of us who've lived long enough to see how fragile life and relationships can be, protect your peace. Guard your dignity. Don't let fear of starting over keep you chained to someone who's already let go. I may have lost a partner, but I regained myself. And that, at this stage in life, is far more valuable than any broken promise. So if you ever find yourself standing at the edge of a hard truth, don't flinch. Face it, you're stronger than you think.